we start off with the positivity. Let's get into something a little bit more deep, a little bit more controversial, that sort of thing. Again, the topic is the state of black in pro wrestling. One of the events from a couple years back that really sparked these kind of conversations was the employment of Big Swole with All Elite Wrestling. She worked with him at the very beginning, the onset of the company. Didn't really make much noise. I know she was gathering some kind of positive attention from the crowd. You know, the Swole chants were kind of lit and they tried to capitalize on it. They didn't really go fully in, but I think that was more so a women's division issue versus just solely Big Swole. So I will say that.
Okay.
But long story short, Swole's contract comes up, it runs out, and basically she's not offered a new contract. And the two parties split. Swole pretty much is asked, like, yo, what happened? What's the deal? She pretty much, she gets her venting off. Which she is absolutely empowered to do. You know, if you work for someone, you've worked your contract through, you did the right thing, you have the right to say your pardon words about your company. You're more than welcome to do that. And she offers a little bit of critique for this growing company, this new company. And a number of her concerns. Number one, I would say definitely was the fact that the women's division didn't really have that tender loving care from a creative end. The head of their division at that time was kind of hands off, or more so not really focused and really pushing that talent. Another, which is why I brought all of us together to speak on this. Another concern of hers was really the fact she gave the caveat of my child's parents are pro wrestlers, so obviously she's going to be watching the product. When she watches this company, she doesn't see someone that looks like her. And I know a lot of wrestling fans, that triggered a lot of wrestling fans, which is goofy to me, but for the sake of conversation, I thought it was a valid assessment where you say, hey, this kid is watching this product. They don't see someone that looks like them. They don't see someone like them doing great things. I know past listeners of Suplex Dinner Club, All Marks Pod, they've heard these stories about us growing up and our perceptions of black wrestlers in the past, the lesser than perception. So when Swole brings something like that to the table, that kind of makes you think. And you're either on the side of you think about it and you're like, whatever, you're a hater. Or you think about it and like, yo, that's kind of real. Now, it's been a couple years since Swole no longer been with All Elite. I wish the best to her as well, her and Cedric and their family. Shout out to her because she was an awesome person. Met her in Atlanta when she was working independent. Great person. I know, Jabari, you've met her as well. I'm pretty confident.
Yes.
So
Yeah, I
shout
met
out
her
to
at
them.
Wildland Mania too. She cool.
Word. Okay. Yeah, she's good people. She's dope. She's a
Get it,
dope person.
man.
No question about it. She's dope. But my question that I want to present to you guys after these years, after the initial response, outrage, or whatever you want to call it, after all that is tempered out and we're seeing how things are moving, my question to you, and I'm going to start with you, Ari, do you think Swole was right in her critique?
So when initially the tweets and the debates were starting early around there within my camp and my friends, we were having those debates about representation and all those same things. I would say, I'll be honest, I was on the side of 50-50 really,
Mm,
more so 70-25 on the sense of I felt like we had representation, but the representation we had wasn't meeting the bar of excellence we're used to in wrestling.
okay.
Saying without race. So when I would bring up a Scorpio Sky and Will Hobbs, so on and so forth, it would be 50-50 with reaction, because either Scorpio Sky is not really meeting his potential. He's great in the ring. He has all the things we want for a champion, but he's just not consistent health wise or storyline wise. What is what it is. So that kind of fell to the wayside. Will Hobbs was on the weaker side. We couldn't really say nothing to represent him, but as time progressed, he got better. The Book of Hobbs storylines was really good. It was things that we can be like, all right, I'm liking what I'm seeing. So are we in a better space when we first started to where we are? I would say a little better. Like seeing saying Hobbs being more active, seeing what's going on with Swerve, saying, even with Prince Nana, like it's really good to see. Like, and Brad, you brought it up a lot, where a lot of things from our culture, slang, dances, whatever, come to wrestling very late. But sometimes, it's still good to see, but even though it's late to them, but it's still good to see that it's open, that this can be, brought to wrestling without any type of censoring or, oh, nah, these people won't understand. None of that, man. It's cool to see we actually could be more free with our style and our culture in wrestling more.
I feel that. I like that. Brittany, what are your thoughts? Do you think Swole was right?
So, first off, I want to say how the response to what she said was out of line. Like, I feel like she was in the right to say what she said.
Definitely.
She's in the company, so she's seeing it literally right up front, while we're just on the outside looking in. So
That's
the
a fact.
response to that was kind of, I didn't too much care for that. I will say she was right, and because back then, because what year she said that? Was that 2020 or 21?
I want to say it's 21. It seems like it's been 2 years, if I'm not
Right.
mistaken.
And it started late 1920, about 21, yeah.
About 2020.
I'm trying to remember who was champs in all across major companies back then. But if I can compare it now to where she said that, if I can give a grade, I'm gonna say probably a solid B, because in that time frame you have like Bianca Belair, who became the longest reigning Raw Women's Champion, of course, with Swerve and AEW, and then you got Athena, and then stuff like that. So I'm going all across the board. So I would say in general in pro wrestling, a solid B.
Okay.
AEW, probably, it goes back and forth, because it's sometimes they were up there. You saw the vision. They listening to the audience on Twitter, Instagram. They listening, but then once they listen and they respond, it's like a here, dang, so y'all can shut up. And then like what weeks later, it's on somebody else. So it's too hit or miss. So I'd say probably a solid C. If they can be consistent with their black wrestlers on their roster, then we ain't that good. But it's just too hit or miss. And pretty much for like WWE as well, like you have to stop the roller coaster, the up and down. Like if you're gonna push this black person, push them. Don't push them because of the internet and what's going on the internet. So just be consistent if you're gonna push us. Like it's a slap in the face. Like if you're gonna push us and then turn around and slap us in the face 2 weeks later. So
Definitely.
Real shit.
Definitely.
Overall, B.
Swerve shit was low key. It's like all that shit. Then he loses to Danielson. It was like,
was
Danielson's my GOAT.
Yeah.
But I just like, what? Come on, bro. Come on.
Some wave. I mean, it's one of those things. It's one of those things in pro wrestling that you question whether or not the push is actually intentional or the company actually riding a wave.
Right.
Like if
which is understandable.
The first champion.
Right.
Yeah, which is absolutely understandable. If the crowd is fully into this person, then yes, you need to prop this person. But at the same point, sometimes it seems disingenuous. That's when you bring those kind of questions.
It still feels like they never found the balance with that.
Correct.
They never find the
That's it.
balance. It's like, hey, this person can be hot. Yes, that thing is true. Also, you can stick to your story. That thing can be true also.
Right.
Where is the balance? Where are the parallels? You can do two things at the same time in 2024 now.
Definitely.
You can do two things at the same time.
Definitely.
I mean, you can have Nana being as positive and being as popular as he is, and still have the balance of Swerve still going for the title. You can have both. You can do both.
This is true. This is
Oh,
true.
and it's another thing too. Like, I do understand pushing black talent, but if they're not getting over, it's okay to push them to the side until they get to a certain point that they're good. Like,
Right.
you don't have to make it look, because if you do that, it's awkward. We
Right.
see it, it's cringy, and
It's
just push them to
pandering.
the right
I
until
mean,
they get better.
they're gonna immediately call that pandering, which
Yep.
some of it is.
Yeah.
But
And
I
that just
agree
goes
to
to
your
show
point
that
for sure.
nobody is in the back room to tell people that too.
Yeah.
You don't have enough black
There you go.
voices in the back to be like, hey,
That's it.
this is what works. This
Yeah.
might not be
Which
what
is
works.
something that we're definitely going to talk about.
Yeah, I
This
know I
is
got a
something
little
that
bit
was
ahead. I
definitely
apologize about
no,
that.
you're no.
I
We're
got a little
fine,
bit ahead.
Now speak
bro.
on it. Speak on it.
Jabari, this pod season. Go for it. You're next. I want to know your thoughts on this. Like, do you think Swole was right, but also continue on your thought?
Okay, Swole was right at the time. She saw back. Okay, let me preface this by saying words do matter. She did mention
Absolutely.
She mentioned diversity. She never mentioned necessarily black. So she
Right.
was kind of correct and kind of not necessarily wrong. You just have to look at the fact of what the word diversity means. Diversity does not always just mean black.
Right.
Now, because of the podcast that we're on, yes, she was right about there being lack of black representation at that time.
Yes.
As far as
Right.
diversity, they did have a lot. AEW had a very diverse roster because you
Yes.
still had Nyla there, you still had Private Party there, you still had Ricky
You had the
Starks
Lucha
coming up. You
Brothers.
had a lot of you had Pride and Proud,
multiple.
PNP. You had the Lucha Brothers, so you had a lot of diverse people there. But as far as the black representation, no, they didn't really have it at that time because, like you said, you only had really Scorpio Sky. You only really had Will Hobbs, who just wasn't Will Hobbs at that moment. You only had Private Party, who was just, okay, I'm going to just do this and just leave. Now, as far as 2 years, 3 years later, Brittany gave it a C. I might have to give it a B plus, only because if you actually look at the product, if you actually look every week, there's somebody black on your screen. Ricky Starks is still the tag team champion. Is part of the tag team champion. Top Flight is in a program with the Best Friends right now.
They stay on.
You know, you had the trios champions with the Acclaimed. So you still, and then of course you have Swerve and Nana, and Khan as a 6-man tag champion. So you have the champions there. You have the representation there. You still have Nyla, who just came back. I mean, who's been there? Excuse me. You have Scorpio Sky, who just came back. You know, you have Keith Lee, who's fighting injury, unfortunately, but he's still been there. He's still trying to do a story. So they have gotten a lot better. It seems like they have listened. They just can't get out of their way with the rest of the Elite story. They just can't stop that right now. It's okay because it's their company. It's their company. Young Bucks gonna do what Young Bucks do. Kenny gonna do what he do. That's fine. That's their company. However, there is more representation that people probably give them, recognition for. And are we counting Ring of Honor also? Are we counting Ring of Honor? How are we counting that?
I would count Ring of Honor and AEW together.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
for
if you
sure.
count them together, you still have Shane Taylor Promotions, and you still have the Infantry, and you
Shout out to
still have
Bravo.
Athena as champion. So the
For sure.
representation is there. And they're trying to do things, like I said, they just have to find that balance now. You
Can I
just
be
got to
honest? The
find the
reason I
balance.
think a lot of those guys that you said are not being acknowledged, like Khan, for one example, they put him as they treat them like afterthoughts. You know what I'm saying? Like they're not
And that's
treated like
fine,
how they were in Ring of Honor. You know what I'm saying? That dude is a monster. But that's another story. Acclaim, Ricky Starks. Do you think is because I mean, maybe Top Flight, they joke on it. You know, they call themselves the biracial combat club.
Yes.
And do you think it's because we don't like they're not, you know what I'm saying, like they don't look like Swerve, or they don't look like Lashley, or they don't look like Moose, like a full black, you know what I'm saying, black a black person, or a full African American or African looking person, you know what I'm saying, not being biracial or anything.
Right.
Do you think that's why they kind of look it as
Yeah.
less than they would see, like if, you know what I'm saying,
Because most people didn't
other
realize.
guys will win it?
Most people don't realize that Ricky Starks and Nyla are black.
Mm.
Most
I didn't know
people
Ricky
never
Starks for a
really
while.
realize that. And Top Flight, yes, they are part of the light skin coalition. But if you talk to them and
They are
if
black.
you speak to them, they will tell you that they're black. We
Shout out
as
to
a
the
fan,
DeBarge section of the.
Yes, sir.
Facts. Facts.
Shout out to y'all. Y'all hold it down.
None of them are in like logic areas, so that's cool. So it's like I can definitely tell they black. Like, you know, it's not that much of confusion. Ricky Starks just has some really, really, really good hair, so I ain't know if he was mixed with like some fucking Polynesian or some shit like that. Who knows?
He looks
bro?
Creole, man. He looks Creole.
Yep, you know,
yeah. He looks
man.
Creole.
Already that
Like,
Creole shit.
yeah.
But like,
Dante
yeah, man, we
Afro-Natty,
gotta all hands on deck, man. We gotta make sure we represent all of these people that are of our culture, man, whether they're mixed, you know what I'm saying, not mixed, whatever, man.
Right.
The diaspora goes far. The diaspora goes very far.
We're family.
we have to get over it as fans. We have to get over, oh, you don't look black enough. Or you have a white wife, you can't represent the culture. We got to get over that because that makes them no less black.
Hey, let's shoulder.
Saying.
Let's shoulder that for another.
Okay.
Let's pod about that later.
Because that's a whole.
Because
you
that's a
can
whole.
spend 2 hours
I
on
know.
that one right there.
Yeah.
Because I'm about to take this off, and I'm about to go get the kufi. I'm about to go put that joint on. But let's go ahead and move it on. Let's move it on.
Okay,
Bradley, man, what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on whether or not Swole was right, and do you see improvement?
So I definitely thought Swerve was right, and I still think wrestling, pro wrestling, and black space in pro wrestling is still in a progressive state and in an evolving state. Just for so long, you know, there was not really too much of an integrated audience, so it was like the booking, the character work, all of that was to appease one culture, and everybody else was just supposed to enjoy it. So now we're just getting to this point to where we're like, okay, we have this representation, and that's great. We've checked that box. Now it has to be the intent. I heard Jabari say that, you know, they're getting in their way. They're getting in their way because they don't want to break through that barrier of making this guy the face, letting this guy beat Kenny Omega, letting this guy submit Daniel Bryan, letting Lashley tap Brock Lesnar. I've been asking for that for 2 years.
Yeah,
How do you make Bobby Lashley the biggest star? You have him tap your biggest draw. There's things that pro wrestling as a whole still lacks when it comes to how they're presenting black wrestlers to me. And I feel like it's not just a pro wrestling thing. I think pro wrestling heads are pulling data from society. They're pulling data on how blacks has been observed over the years, what we like, what we will tolerate, what we won't tolerate. And now it's getting to the point to where the black fan voice, we're in these spaces and we're really hammering home on, we want to see this. We need to see this. Yo, for so long, the promo was so important in professional wrestling, right? I go back now and none of those promos hit me or are really connect with me from a white person or a black person. Like if you think about how black people talk or, you know, different parts of our language, what those white wrestlers were saying back in the day, now I'd be like, yo, that shit was trash. And he may be considered a top promo guy. But now I'd be like, you know, that shit is trash. But I will say that Swole was right, but it is ever evolving. We got Jade from AEW. We had Bianca Belair. We got Carmelo. We got a host of black wrestlers on the main stage. And then as the fans, we have evolved too because we have been put in these positions to where now black companies can run independently, and it may not
Definitely.
be the biggest, but it's getting there. We're putting our dollars there slowly but surely. Oh, they're selling merch. We're doing merch. When Gresham did his thing, I paid for his pay-per-view. Anytime he had something, if there was a show and I can afford it and I knew I wasn't going, I would buy a ticket just so they would have a ticket. So,
yes,
I mean, she was right, but we are in an evolving state and the future looks bright as far as the black space in professional wrestling.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. I agree.
yes.
It's an ever evolving space in pro wrestling, and we're starting to see changes in the entire pro wrestling landscape that will show that a lot of black people are being heard. A lot of things that we side eyed, some of these companies are correcting. Some of them are a little bit late to the party. You know, it's one of those things. But we're seeing it. So I absolutely agree with you. Listeners, let us know down below. Do you think that Swole was right? And do you feel that the landscape of pro wrestling is changing? Let us know down below.
Or just to kind of add more, like look at how many different people wrestling unite as fans, right? We are
Mm-hmm.
friends with Caucasians, we're friends with Jewish, we're
Definitely.
friends with Spanish
Oh, yeah.
people. And why wouldn't people from other places, and I tell them, why wouldn't you want me to see somebody look like me be the champion and dominate like how you've seen for decades? Right? How they gave you a Rey Mysterio, they gave you a Stone Cold Steve Austin, how they gave you whatever you wanted, a whole smorgasbord or whatever you wanted. You should want to see your friends represented in that space as well. It's simple math. It's simple
That's
math.
facts. That's
If we had
facts.
more representation in wrestling in the 90s and 80s, Nation of Domination would be a face faction.
Oh,
Definitely.
yeah. Most definitely.
Definitely.
Simple as that.
Definitely. They would have even given them more of a run because low key,
You know what
the
I'm saying?
Nation of Domination run wasn't really that long standing
Yeah,
when we look
if you
back at
really
it.
break it down, Nation of Domination was a nasty
It was
faction, bro.
super. It started
It was
off
nasty
super
work.
nasty.
Even the way it ended, it was like
That's
some Coyote Pro shit. I swear to God, bro. I don't know what Rock was on, bro. That motherfucker was on some William O'Neill shit with Nation of Domination, bro. But we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it another time, bro. He dismantled that damn organization, bro. They was running strong, turning
yeah.
niggas to pimps and
He was the
sexual
one.
chocolates
He
and
was the
shit. Like, what
one.
is going on here?
Yeah, he was the one. He came
I
in with
tell you, man.
he came in with the agenda for sure.
Put Owen Hart in there. It got
Ugh. Hey,
Man, like I
shout out
said, man.
to my guy Nugget. But nah, yeah, that wasn't your party, man. That
Was
wasn't your
not.
cookout, my guy. If you haven't already, like, comment, subscribe, and of course look us up on socials at Suplex Dinner Club. And be sure to check out our other projects. We talk college football on Dogs versus All Y'all. That's a weekly college football podcast where we don't just talk about the Georgia Bulldogs, we talk about all things college football. The Life and Times Pod, which is short for the Life and Times of a Restaurant Lifer podcast, where I have some chill conversations with some cool and interesting people that I've met in my years in the hospitality industry. And of course, check out Talk 'em in the Building. That's a pro wrestling podcast where we solely focus on the promo. We talk about the talkers, we hype the hype man, and we pontificate on the promo. It's a fun project, and if you're a pro wrestling fan, I'm sure you're going to enjoy it. If you're into TV and movie reviews, check out Four Corners Cinema with Ari and Adrian, a podcast where two lifelong pro wrestling fans review film and other forms of media that just so happen to have some of our favorite pro wrestlers. The Suplex Dinner Club family is growing, and I would love for you to be a part of it.